Hello and welcome to this very special joint edition of the Irish Wrestling Podcast, along with the Tees and Tights Wrestling Podcast. My name is Mark O'Brien. I'm joined today by the host of the Tees and Tights Wrestling Podcast, the one and only Mr. Andy Moore, and we are here today to review the weekend that was for Progress Wrestling for Super Strong Style 16 2023. Andy, first of all, thank you very much for joining me, and thank you very much for doing this collaboration. Andy, how are you doing?
Very, very well, Mark. Glad to be working with yourself again, and good to actually finally get a chance to meet you at Super Strong Style 16 because we've worked together for a while, but it's the first time we've ever actually met in person.
Spot on. Yeah, like listen, to Irish wrestling fans, myself and Andy have worked for a few different websites online, largely American-based websites, and we found common ground being the only non-American people and people who have European sensibility and sense of humor across those shows. We used to do various different podcasts and shows reviewing be it OTT shows, Irish-based shows, UK-based shows together as well. So brilliant, as Andy mentioned, to meet each other in person over Super Strong Style weekend. And yeah, we're here today to have a chat about the 5 or 6 shows that took place in the space of 72 hours or so. So listen, Andy, this was a very hectic weekend. There was a huge amount to consume. By the end of it, I was fairly wiped out. I know you were as well from chatting to you
Yeah, it
afterwards.
was.
But what was your overall takeaway? What was your overall feeling, I suppose, when leaving the venue on Monday evening? How did you think the weekend went? Did you enjoy it? Do you think Progress was in a better position for having had that weekend? Or what was your main takeaway?
I had sort of so I'd been feeling a little bit jaded prior, as you know, with the Teen Titans podcast. We've gone on a bit of hiatus, just due to being a bit creatively exhausted. My co-host being very busy as a counselor, and this really made me fall in love with wrestling again this weekend, with British wrestling in particular. Be it from the fans that were in attendance, Lee himself, all the other people who I got a chance to speak to, Mark, yourself, and it was just such, Mike from Mike Angus from Progress as well. Just so many great guys to talk to. And then you had the WXW guys as well. And again, that was fantastic meeting some of the people I haven't spoken to for like 6 months since I was last in Germany for a WXW show. And yeah, I just really just kind of, and the action, that in-ring action, that Lycos Gym story that has been told, not just over that weekend, but I think you can go all the way back to when he faced Chris Brooks. That's when this journey started. And to see it culminated, it was amazing. I loved it, and I loved it. It made me love wrestling. It made me want to restart my podcast. It made me want to get on to your podcast to talk about what a great weekend it really was.
Yeah, I kind of mirror the sentiments. It very much energized me leaving, in terms of
Mm.
my own appreciation and my own wanting to wrestle again, me personally. So it was absolutely brilliant. And I think you mentioned it there, Progress as hosts, as um people people who create a fan experience, people who create a fan weekend. I think they do it the absolute best in Europe. Be it from, you've got the two owners, promoters on the door, Martyn and Lee, welcoming every single person that comes into the venue. There's a huge sense of camaraderie and welcoming for everybody who
Mm.
comes into the venue, not just from the staff, but not just from the owners, but from the whole way down from the staff. There's so many visible people who can help anybody, be it with people who have um, abilities or special needs. Everybody's made to feel incredibly welcome. There's also that ethos of that everybody's reminded of at the start of every show: don't be a dick. And that might be a simple thing to a lot of people, but I've been to a lot of shows in Ireland. I'm not afraid to say it, where there's people who regularly act the dick in the crowd. They think they can get away with saying whatever they want, and it creates an unsavory atmosphere, and it spoils a lot of people's evenings. The production, the setting, the lighting, in-ring quality, the merchandising, the branding, marketing, everything from top to bottom. I don't think any other brand in Europe. You may disagree. I know you're a huge WXW fan, but I don't think any other brand in Europe does it as well in those key metrics in terms of the show quality and what they
Mm.
bring to the table as a brand of Progress and the investment they make, be it into the camera quality, top to bottom. I don't think people do it in Europe as well as Progress Wrestling, and that's coming from somebody who intimately sounds a bit weird, but intimately loves OTT wrestling, and everything goes on in Ireland. I'm always blown away when I attend a Progress show, and as you mentioned, like getting to talk to Lee, getting to talk to Martin, getting to talk to Mike, across all 3 days, like the energy they all bring, how much they love what they do, and like I've no doubt they're under extreme pressures, to make sure everything's delivered on scale that it kind of justifies their investment in the product. It also, they're under pressure to deliver a good fan experience from top to bottom. Like even the tie-ins they have with the Real Wrestling Company, who are selling their own merchandise on site, and the amount of talent they brought over, be it like young people like Nick Wayne, or bringing people back in like Paul Robinson and Will Osprey. Like that would have brought an additional pressures in itself, because if that crowd that turned up in the day turned on those two, that would reflect badly on Lee and Martin. I thought it was top to bottom that whole weekend. I thoroughly couldn't have been more impressed. And I think we'll touch on some specific things as we go through this weekend. But yeah, my takeaway was just a thoroughly fun wrestling
Yeah.
weekend. Yeah, listen, but before we kind of I natter on for too much longer, I suppose we better get cracking into the weekend that was. Day one. Now, full transparency, I missed my flight in the morning. Now, I'm not going to get into the reasons why. So I was due to fly over very early on Saturday morning. However, I missed the first day of Progress Super Strong Style Day one. I had a friend who flew over early that morning. He gave me the full cliff notes, and I've got a chance to review it in Progress on Demand since. And I made it in time for the WXW show that evening, thankfully, and got to meet the wonderful Mr. Andy Moore in person. Andy, before we go into match by match for both shows, did you enjoy day one?
Oh, absolutely. As you say, double shows. You had the Super Strong Style 16 day one itself, and then you go on to the WXW Germany, the We Love Wrestling London, which was absolutely fantastic. I absolutely loved that. But incredible singles matches all on one card is always just such a, how do you beat something like that? And Haskins, Leon Slater, Crowley, Danny Black, Shigeruhiri, Man Like the Reese, Luke Jacobs, Rampage Brown, Kid Lycos, Big Damo, Nathan Cruz versus Maggot, Nick Wayne versus Robbie X, Will Osprey versus Tate Mayfair. Every single one of those can be a main event in a particular venue all across Europe, all across the independent scene, because, and the quality, everything offered something a little bit different. No match ever felt like it was the same, and every match had its own flavor. And you gotta love that. You go from your powerhouses to your high flyers to technical wrestling, to Nick Wayne and Robbie X just absolutely tearing it up, doing everything. And Will Ospreay Tate Mayfair's was just again just on another level of drama and wrestling at its best.
Yeah, and like I suppose, listen, you and I would obviously love this type of day. Like where it's just banger after banger after banger. But I did kind of come across a few people who might necessarily have been as invested wrestling fans as you and I, and they did find there was quite a repetitive nature in itself to the day in terms of its 8 singles matches in a row. It's a tournament, whereas if you go to a lot of particularly like for a Saturday night out, a lot of people are just going for entertainment value. They're not necessarily looking for, I want to see XYZ type of wrestling. And this match, like if you go to a lot of shows, particularly Progress, even day 2 and day 3, there's a lot more variety. They'll have comedy spots, they'll have tags, they'll have possibly a hardcore type match. They'll have every show will have peaks and troughs and peaks and valleys, whereby you're building to a certain point where you expect the crowd to have the most energy for a different part. Whereas I think a lot of people, just from my own friend who's attending the show, said he found it quite hard to sustain that level of attention. For say if you're a more casual fan, that level of attention, that same energy to give to each match as the show progressed. And I completely understand that, but again, like I suppose it is that table setting day where it's setting you up for the weekend ahead, and it's always going to naturally be like that. Whereas an element of lethargy by the end of it.
Yeah, whereas as you mentioned, a casual may look at it as got 8 singles matches, whereas I look at it and go, well, that's a powerhouse, that's a technical, that's Yeah, I can definitely kind of get that. And yeah, there's a certain amount of burnout in that type of wrestling, especially when every match really was that good and explosive. It's hard to then just keep going from one to the next. But I'm there and I'm just trying to evaluate every single match, and I'm looking at every little bit. But the pop when Kid Lycos won his match against Big Damo, and that was such a great moment for him. And then there was so many little intricate parts throughout the day that I can look for, but maybe a casual can't.
Like it was like that. I suppose if you touched on it, I might as well run through the results. Like there was a number of kind of not maybe not upsets, but surprising results. So somebody who may not have been in attendance at the show.
Yes.
Like my own predictions were way off. Completely off. I had Tate Mayfair's winning the whole thing, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. So Mark Haskins, former
I'm
OTT.
just gonna say I got 7 out of 8 on my predictions for the first day.
Well, fuck you. So, former OTT champion, lest we forget, Mark Haskins beat Leon Slater. I actually thought Leon might pick up the win there, just based on kind of age profile and demographics, and you're looking for. They might want to elevate a few younger stars going into the later rounds, but like it was absolutely incredible match I saw later on in the weekend. We got to see the highlights of Mark Haskins as a result. Charles Crowley then beat Danny Black, and Charles Crowley, I've been crying out for a long time, needs to come to Ireland. I think he's absolutely incredible at everything he does. The best character on the independent scene, and I'll fight anybody who argues with me.
Yeah.
I think he's absolutely amazing. Shigeruhiri beat Man Like Darius. This maybe not so surprising after Man Like Darius's recent Twitter outbursts targeting certain people within progress management. So heading into the weekend. Less said about that, the better. Luke Jacobs then beat Rampage Brown. Possibly surprising. Like I had Luke winning that match, but again, that kind of ties into the younger profile they're bringing up. Luke, former Atlas champion as well, and incredibly successful over in Rev Pro. I just had it in my head that Rampage might win that. But anyway, Kid Lycos beat Big Damo, and I was gobsmacked. Like obviously, I'm not as intimately involved in the British scene, or follow it as deeply as as intricately as you would do. And you were touched it previously around the Lycos Gym storyline that's going back all the way back to Chris Brooks and whatnot. But Big Damo is like he's the man in independent wrestling now. He is the man. Like I was at the For Love of Wrestling event a few weeks ago, and he was poster boy for ICW one day. He was a poster boy for Progress and TNT the next day. Then he was doing stuff with Prestige. Then he was in the For Love of Wrestling. And then in Ireland, he's the man with OTT. Like I assumed he would get to the close to the main event and then put somebody over that way. Not in the first round necessarily, but I suppose it just kind of was a bigger arc involved in the booking of this. The original Progress champion Nathan Cruz then beat Maggot. Now a lot of Irish-based fans mightn't be as familiar with Maggot. He's obviously a regular over in WXW, regular on the British scene. I hadn't been hugely exposed to him previously, and I was hugely impressed by him. Nathan Cruz, I just thought was amazing in everything he did, every movement he had, just so fluid, so crisp, so technically excellent. Following on from that, we had the King of the Cruiserweights, Robbie X. He was beaten by the young upstart from Defy Wrestling, and young, God knows what age he is, 12-year-old Nick Wayne. Nick Wayne beat Robbie X, which I'm sure some people might not necessarily have forecast. And then in the main event, making his Progress Wrestling return after a number of years, Will Osprey beat my pick to hold the whole bloody thing, Tank Mayfair's. And I've got a bone to pick with Lee McAteer about that. But anyway, incredible lineup, incredible day. I know we touched on it, some people might have had an element of lethargy at the end of that, but yeah, top for a Progress show, top to bottom, absolutely incredible.
Yeah, Robbie X was the one match I got wrong. I had Robbie X going over Nick Wayne. I think there was more wishful thinking on my part, wanting Robbie X to get the win there. But as soon as Kid Lycos beat Big Damo on day one, I was like, that's the moment I knew for 100% certainty that Lycos was going to go on to win, because and there's no other way you put Big Lycos over Big Damo unless he was. And so for those who don't follow our Twitter page, Kid Lycos was my number one pick for the tournament when we first when it first came out. I did say Mark Haskins was and then Luke Jacobs, and then a couple of days later I was just like, you know what, Kid Lycos is gonna win, I'm sure of it. And then I explained my reasons why. Say the story that's been there, he's been putting on size lately. The match quality has been just so impressive ever since that Chris Brooks match. When Chris Brooks won King of DDT earlier this year, I was like, oh, come on, you have to give it to Lycos now. And that match, I was like, if he wins against Damo, he's going to win the whole thing. And
fair play. Yeah, again, there was a bit element of that, like, well, what's the point in giving him one huge win if he's gonna lose to somebody else? There's obviously an overarching story going into that. Following that, then we went into the WXW Live in London show. I really enjoyed this. I thought
I
this
love
was,
this.
I loved it, and even though like, and there was a few grumblings around me, like, oh, more singles matches. Like there was 7 out of 8 of the matches were singles, but it was very, for somebody who wasn't hugely exposed to, I suppose, Europe, maybe European and Eastern European wrestling in particular. There's a lot of talents I hadn't seen before, and it's just like, book this man, please. And then there's
I love WXW, and so
yeah,
does my message. I say day one was the better show, obviously the Progressive Superstar 16. But my wife, who went along to the first 2 shows alongside me, she preferred the WXW show.
oh yeah,
She likes the production. She likes how the matches aren't as long.
yeah.
And she loves the production and the regimen of just how quickly things would move on from section to section. So she thoroughly enjoyed both shows, but yeah, she picked the WXW show.
Yeah, I would echo those sentiments. It was very much a WWE produced feel to it in terms of match layout, match formatting, um, card timings, interaction with the crowd, the variety of matches, kind of even some of the characters in the show. You'd think that like, okay, that's obviously he's mirrored his career around somebody else, and we'll touch on that in a minute. But anyways, we'll crack on with the results. So Maggot, who had been beaten by Nathan Cruz earlier tonight, somehow miraculously made a huge recovery, found vats of energy from God knows where, and he beat El Capitan Leighton Buzzard. Leighton Buzzard, who recently announced that he's just finished up with ICW.
Yeah, I was surprised at that.
Yeah, so he's on a kind of a bye-bye tour at the minute, I think. That's all I can say about that. So he's listen, I personally think he's the most well-rounded wrestler in Europe, probably, in his ability.
Definitely one of them.
Yeah.
He's so crisp.
Yeah.
Again, he's a guy who's put on tremendous amount of size over the last year.
Yeah.
His work with ICW was just so good. I was just like, when I didn't start getting into WXW or ICW until they were on the WWE network, and I fell in love with ICW because of guys like Leighton Buzzard and
Leighton's incredible. He's incredible. Like he's over here tomorrow for Fight Factory Pro Wrestling. He was over a couple of weeks ago for Over the Top Wrestling OTT. We had a tournament to crown a new number 1 contender, and the show was almost based around him. Like the way it was structured and built towards his. He had an injury angle, and his selling is just different level. He had an injury angle from the first match, gets to the second, gets all the way to like nearly has it, nearly has it. The whole like, he didn't win, but the whole show is built around him and his story the whole way through. And I'm not sure how much OTT you watch, with Joker Bray loves story and selling. It's unbelievable when he gets it right like that. But anyway, sadly, Leighton Buzzard lost to Maggot, who had previously been beaten in the night.
Going into this match, I think this was Leighton Buzzard's 3rd match with WXW, and for Maggot on the other reverse, obviously regular member, he had actually been on a losing streak, so this was his first win in quite some time. And normally he comes out with his partner, Baby Allison, amazing, the witch bitch of pro wrestling. And she's been the reason he's been losing, kind of, and she wasn't there on this one, and he managed to pick up the win. So that's kind of the whole story going into there.
Amazing. The next match then we had Norman Harris beat Philip Michael. Norman Harris, I was looking to train with the following morning. I was very impressed with how solid he is and everything he does. Just a very much lone wolf Baron Corbin. It was my instant kind of reaction, the way his gimmick, his dress up when Baron Corbin first came on the scene in say 2016. That kind of similar look, that his attributes, his movement, his moveset as well. Yeah, like he's
Big young lad as well.
big young lad. Could do with the feet. Could do with the feed. I chatted to
I
him
think
about
he's
that.
only, he's only in his early 20s. So I think he's been
Yeah,
5 years with WXW now.
yeah,
Came out of their WXW Academy, trained under
yeah.
Walter and Robert Dreisker. He's been injured for a long period, and he's been playing a role of the sporting director of
Yeah, yeah.
WXW. And he's recently got fired from that and has
Okay.
returned to active duty as a wrestler.
Yeah, he's actually a really nice guy as well. So like I was like getting to know him then, training at the Nigel McGuinness seminar the following morning. He was brilliant. But anyway, moving swiftly on, we then moved into some people I had never had any exposure to whatsoever. Massimo Pesca beat Maria Della Rosa. Maria Della Rosa seemed to be the toast of the room. Everybody knew who she was. Everybody chanted Maria Della.
She is amazing. I
Unbelievable.
love Maria Della Rosa.
Yeah, that I mean in my
Fantastic talent.
in my jet lag state of traveling from Dublin to London, I did manage to sneak in a tweet that evening saying OTT, Five Factory, whoever else available in Ireland, please bring Maria De La Rosa over. She's absolutely incredible talent. Thoroughly impressed there. Massimo Pesca as well. He had a nice little showing for himself. I don't think he quite measures up to our own Italian wrestlers here in Ireland, be it Renzo Rose, the Sem, Ilya
I think
Drago.
we should have an Italian clash in Ireland. That would be a great one. But
Well,
yeah, Maria Della Rosa's just started her own company in Spain.
oh wow.
Which is going to be based in Madrid.
Oh wow.
We are United Wrestling.
Amazing. That's brilliant for her. Yeah, like this, and I'd sent that tweet out, and the amount of people from all around Europe kind of interacted with me on my tweet and stuff as well. So she has a huge following, and it's showing in her work. I got. Did WXW still have a tie-in with WWE, or is that kind of ceased as well as the other promotions?
I believe that has come to an end, much
Okay,
like
okay,
the ICW and
okay.
things. So,
I was thinking if NXT Europe come up, like she'd be one of the first people I'd contact be on the female roster. She's absolutely incredible. Then moving on, we had then the Arrows of Hungary, Dover and Icarus beat Ilya Bloom and LSG. Now, we dubbed me and my friend who'd never been exposed to these people. We dubbed them the small, beefy, bald Hungarians. So they had a manager with what was their stable's name again?
So it's Amboss, which
Amboss.
stands for Anvil, and yeah, Robert Dreisker is kind of managing him at the moment, but
Yeah.
he is an active wrestler. But he's got the face guard because he's broke his orbital bone and nose in a cage match.
Is that for legitimate or
legitimate?
okay.
Yeah, it was a nasty injury, and the worst weird thing, it was off a crossbody.
Oh god, okay.
It was it just shows how dangerous wrestling can be. The fact that orbital fracture just off a crossbody. But the Arrows of Hungary are I've managed to interview them both actually back in my Body Slam day, and they are fantastic wrestlers, guys, people. There's a scene in Hungary only because of the Arrows of Hungary. They started it all. They started the very first wrestling promotion, which is HCW, Hungarian Championship Wrestling, that now has a huge following. And now they've just started Passion Pro, which has a bit more of a European supercard feel to them, with a lot of the talent that you see in WXW shows.
I was thoroughly impressed with how solid their work was as well. Like LSG, he was kind of an unheralded, not overly known in the European scene, not hugely known in the American independent scene as a wrestler.
ROH, but never really got further than ROH. He's a good wrestler. He's
listen, he's well presented, good, always in shape, good gear, good solid work. Like it was a fine match, but I suppose the two standouts were Dover and Icarus. And then continuing on the Hungarian theme, we then had Peter Tahani beat Michael Oku. Peter Tahani blew my mind. I thought he was absolutely outstanding. And when you're against probably the most heralded young wrestler in Europe at the minute, Michael Oku, going over and doing working with PWG and whatnot, and he's doing Chris Jericho's podcast. He's the kind of flavor of the week in a sense that like he's here, there, and everywhere. He's absolutely incredible at everything he does. But Peter Tahani matched him every step of the way, and I was thoroughly impressed with him. When I made a point of got up and congratulating him, saying well done. I did tweet him. Hopefully he gets booked in Ireland as well, because there's a scene out there. You just touched on. There's a scene out there, that part of the world in Europe, that like most people wouldn't be aware of or have huge exposure to. That it was just thoroughly impressive.
Yeah, actually, thinking of the Arrows of Hungary, they've got a huge training camp, which a 5-day summer camp over in Hungary that have got the Greedy Souls and Robert Dreisker as other coaches on the scene. But Peter Tahani is 22 years old, Hungarian, 5 years in the business now. I've had a chance to interview him. He's actually my most listened to interview out of all the people I've ever interviewed. Peter Tahani ranks the highest, and it's by quite a decent margin as well. But what a fantastic talent! Again, 6'3" almost, big ass hands on him. He's got a hell of a chop. And when he fills out more, he's going to be.
He's a big boy already. Like he's
a
big boy. Like he can do all the flipping and flying, but it was his selling and his kind of technique that really impressed me. Anyway, so moving on from there, we had two British standouts on the female scene: Charlie Morgan and Harley Hudson. Charlie Morgan, both, and Harley Hudson, probably familiar to everybody kind of following this podcast. They're very well traveled on the circuit, very popular, both very polished in their movesets. I think Charlie Morgan won this match, but she did kind of stand out slightly more than Harley Hudson in my eyes. I do like her additional level of physicality. Yeah, it was a good match.
Yeah, Hudson is a fantastic young talent. She's going to be a superstar in the coming years, but she's not where Charlie Morgan is in standing of career. And Morgan is a fantastic talent, and she's now being entered into WXW's Femme Fatales during the World Tag Team Festival weekend. So good to see her getting a booking off the back of this, because I think all the British guys deserve to get booked more on WXW after this weekend.
Yeah, I think there's a few Irish guys as well. I don't know, after this weekend in particular, there's a few Irish guys who've been booked out there, like LJ Cleary, Jay Steins, and a few others have been out there a few times. So yeah, listen, it's a coming force, WXW, and a lot of people are getting far more exposure to it, even though it's not on the WWE network anymore. So listen, yeah, huge popularity, and I can tell
WXW now, it's on YouTube, $8.99. Not only do you get WXW, you get Wrestling Cult from Germany, you get Body Zoy from Belgium, Body Slam Pro Wrestling from Denmark, Rising Sun from Italy, and there's at least a couple more European promotions that do run their shows. On a delayed release, so they're like 3 to 4 months after they've occurred, but it's a great way to keep up with everything going on in Europe.
Fantastic. Yeah, listen, they're brilliant at kind of promoting that platform as well during the show. The MC for the evening I found thoroughly entertaining, absolutely hilarious. Like,
Dan's great.
He's brilliant. He had a touch of Borat about him. He was good fun, and he wasn't taking himself too seriously. He was having pints during the show and had some funny, quirky comments that we'll probably touch on in a bit, but it was very funny. So anyway, moving on from there, we had the shotgun title match with Lawrence Roman beat Gary J. Gary J did not impress me. Lawrence Roman did impress me. And Boss is another. Lawrence Roman is another member of Boss. Yeah, another member of the big beefy bald men society, as my friend put them. Again, with their big angry manager confronted us twice in the front row over not sure what we agreed from with, but anyway, listen, Lawrence Roman, thoroughly impressive. Gary J seemed to be like a stereotypical indie guy, in my opinion, from the American States. I wasn't hugely impressed, but that's just my own opinion anyway.
He's like the stiff ginger and robo ginger, but I can't say I was overly massively, but Lawrence Roman, the pitbull of Amboss, as he's been known, he's been on a roll since joining Amboss, and it's his first title, and he's been holding it with distinction. He beat Maggot to actually get the WXW shotgun title.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. Well, there you are now. So every day's a school day, Mr. Moore. And then in the main event, we had a repeat of what was going to be a repeat the following day from Progress. So maybe ill-informed booking. We had Shigeruhiri beat Mr. Luke Jacobs. It was an excellent, excellent match. Thoroughly enjoyable. A brilliant way to cap off a full day one. But I think you'd said to me at the time, at halftime of that show, "Oh, we're bloody seeing this tomorrow anyway. Why have they booked this?" It was absolutely excellent. But I think WXW may have stepped on a couple of toes booking this. But anyway, what can you do? These things happen. This wrestling.
Yeah, well, you kind of see, because obviously Jacobs knew, because you see him go look at it and go round 2 tomorrow, in when he lost. But yeah, it was a great match, solid match. Two big, heavy guys. Went by far the longest match of the night as well for the WXW show, and yeah, great beefy two men just battering each other for our entertainment.
Or some people would say big meaty men slapping meat.
Yes,
No,
absolutely.
it was excellent. There wasn't one person in the venue who didn't enjoy it. And what was really cool afterwards was there was a huge amount of talent from the kind of London-based scene. Like obviously there's an element of networking involved around that. Like I just thought the likes of Dave Francisco and Mira and other wrestlers who based around say the Rev Pro schools in London. They were there visiting friends and stuff. And there was kind of a cool kind of camaraderie in the venue afterwards in the Dome and Tufnell. So it's cool. I trained with a few of them previously, so it's cool to kind of go over and have a chat with them, catch up with them as well. So listen, that was day one. It was a thoroughly enjoyable day. And then day two was a big day. Day two, I think I tweeted at the time, and this is obviously a recency bias thing and kind of how you feel leaving a venue, you tweet these type of things. I said it was the best independent wrestling show that I'd ever attended. Um, for one day show, that I thought it was absolutely incredible. On reflection, probably wasn't, but like at your gut feeling leaving a venue, you can always think like that was just mind blowing. And again, that went back to the venue of the Electric Ballroom, the production value, the lighting, the investment in merchandising, branding, the welcoming nature of everybody there. Lee Martyn, the show they put on top to bottom, I was just blown away by it. I
Yeah.
couldn't have enjoyed day two anymore. Yeah, so like at a high level, before we get into the results, what were your thoughts on day two before we crack into it?
Trying to think if day 2 or day 3 were they were just both so bloody good. Each had their points, I'll tell you that. It was definitely another absolutely fantastic show, and another set of great tournament matches, sprinkled in with some tag team action, both in the main event and an earlier tag team match, and a fatal four-way to open the show.
Yeah, like I thought you really got to see the progress elements of storytelling, things they've been working on for a number of months in this show as well. This is more of a progress show. This is more of a show that they're producing on a monthly basis where
Yeah.
they've got overarching stories, and I thought it was bloody excellent. I said it to Lee, and I got a chance to chat to Will Osprey afterwards. I was like, "Listen, I said what I tweeted, like that's the best independent show I've seen in person." And I explained the kind of reason, the logic behind like the in ring quality coupled with storytelling, and plus the other things I've been going on about since the start of this podcast. It was absolutely amazing. But anyway, start dilly dallying. Started off the show, we had a fatal four-way, four losers from the day before. Nice way to put it. We had Robbie X versus Tate Mayfairs versus Danny Black versus Maggot in a fatal four-way. Who's the winner of the losers match? And Robbie X, King of the Cruiserweights, the Rev Pro Cruiserweight Champion, came out on top of that one. That was it's a fun match, and it was good. It was because it was a different pace the day before, so I think they intentionally structured this show well in terms of this is more of a fun, everybody take the piss out of Tate Mayfair's kind of match. Maggot does his kind of gimmicky stuff. You've got Robbie blowing everybody's mind. Danny Black again, kind of adjacent, doing similarly flippy dippy stuff. But it's good. It changed the tone from the day before, I thought.
Absolutely, and yeah, great way to start the show. Typical type of way for Progress or a lot of good independent shows to throw out four incredible talents and say, go do your thing, go have fun, show us what you can do, wow the crowd, give us an opener, and yeah, every single one of those lads delivered in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then following on from that, we had decided Progress actually had labeled them as the 0121 when in actual fact they're boisterous behavior.
Yes.
So yeah, they're beat Rampage Brown and Big Damo in a tag match. Now that would probably, I'd go on record as being the biggest tag team in probably BritRes history, at least anyway. If not Europe. So that was quite a shocking surprise. But it's good to see from the day before that Leon Slater and Man Like Therese, two hugely promising and unbelievably talented young talents, got their win, having been knocked out of the first round super strong title tournament. So I was thoroughly happy for that, given how frequent they are over this part of the world and how excellent they are. Then following that, we then had the original Progress Wrestling champion, former Super Strong Style winner, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I am, Nathan Cruz beat Will Osprey, another former Super Strong Style 16 winner, and another former Progress Wrestling champion. Again, if I'm wrong, please call me out.
No, yeah, the Nathan Cruz was definitely the first champion. He came out with his staff, not
Yes.
a belt. It was the original Progress Wrestling staff, affectionately known by the Progress faithful. I'm not going to say it, but yeah, it was another and Will Osprey, first ever Super Strong Style 16 winner. Lovely shenanigans in this. Love to
Yes.
see a bit of
Yes.
shenanigans in wrestling, and
Took the
Nathan.
words out of my mouth.
Yeah, Eddie Guerrero would have been proud of Nathan Cruz in this.
Yeah, it was excellent, and you took the words out of my mouth. It changed the tone of the show again, having shenanigans. My friend beside me, who's not a big independent wrestling fan, said, "Ah, yes, the man with the big bird stick won. Good, use the bird stick again." So I really enjoyed it. And Nathan Cruz, when I was like, yes, shenanigans, best part of wrestling is shenanigans. Okay, then following on from that, we then had brilliant match between Mark Haskins and Charles Crowley. I was gutted that Charles Crowley didn't win this. I fully bought in and invested in him from the day before as well. So yeah, listen, Haskins just did Haskins things, just batter Charles Crowley. Charles Crowley did 20 things, and Haskins came out on top. There's not much work in add to that. It was a 30 physical, enjoyable encounter.
Loved the crowd in this match.
Yeah.
They really had fun, and Haskins
Yeah.
had fun with the crowd as well.
Yeah, and I think that's what I wanted to go and touch on before about this being one of the best independent shows I've attended. Crowd played a huge part in that, like in terms of the enjoyment, the atmosphere in the room. Following on from that, then we had Lana Austin versus Millie McKenzie for the Progress Women's Championship, and this was incredible. I thought this was, aside from the main event, this is my match of the day. I love the story going into it. I love shenanigans on the outside. I loved the way Lana Austin's been presented and built up as this superstar within Progress Wrestling. Her wrestling itself is incredibly underappreciated, unheralded. I think she's bloody good at storytelling and what she does. Millie McKenzie, tweeted out at the time, I think she's the best unsigned young female wrestler in the world. I think if you were starting a company tomorrow, NXT Europe, she is number one who you sign. I think she could walk into the AEW roster now. I think she'd stand out head and shoulders above a huge amount of them. I think NXT in America could also benefit from having somebody like her. But anyway, these are just my opinions.
Yeah, she's. I love her when she takes herself seriously. When she goes out there and because she is an incredible wrestler. And I know a lot of times she can be having a bit of fun and dancing along, singing along with the crowd. When she gets serious, when she gets downright into that wrestling, she's an absolute badass who not many people can stop her. The only other people I could put in consideration would have been Alex Windsor and Danny Jordan, I think, who are among that level of talent for British and European and even on the independent level across the world.
I think she's somebody you could build a division around for the next 5 to 10 years as well, which not many other female talents in Europe.
Given her age, I mean, she's what, 22, 23 now?
Like, yeah, and I think there's other female talents in the UK might not have the same age beyond their side. They might not have that longevity when a company looks to sign them. So that's why I think she's absolutely incredible. The following on from that, we had repeat of the night before's final match of the show. We had Luke Jacobs against Shigeruhiri. This time Luke Jacobs won. Surprise, surprise. So 50-50 booking. Again, this is another.
It was a different match at least.
But
Iri's chest had literally been split open from the amount of chops, and you could see blood just seeping out of the vessels.
Yeah.
Oh, it was lovely. It was beautiful.
It was thoroughly enjoyable. And again, there was an overlap the night before, the two of them beating the piss out of each other, but it was structured differently. And again, it was brilliant. Anyway, then from then we went into the main event, and this is the best spectacle match I've seen in person.
I had to leave halfway through to catch the train, so I was so gutted to miss this one.
Idiot, Andrew. This is incredible. Smoking Aces beat Sunshine Machine, and it was like I said this at the time, and I've said it 100 times since. Charlie Sterling is the best unsigned wrestler in the world, regardless of age. He is unbelievable. unbelievable. And the fact that TK Cooper, Chuck Mambo, Nick Riley all were keeping up with it, like not just keeping up with him, they're all flying it. They were doing absolutely incredible things. When Charlie Sterling comes over to Ireland and he's part of the draw, a lot of it can be a bit more panto-y, shenanigansy kind of heat enforcers, and there's a bit of element with that as well when he's with Dom and at his Regnum. But when he's in an avenue such as this, where he's the star and it's his wrestling and his work that kind of shines through, it's just night and day compared to half the roster on any show you watch him. He's just unbelievable.
See, I get annoyed at OTT for not bringing Nick Riley over to Ireland to team with Charles, to tag team with him. I know he teams with Maxted typically as a tag team over in OTT, but him and Nick Riley as a tag team, for me, have been one of the best teams in the England for, well, since they started wrestling together for like 2 years ago. They became a tag team, and they've already become one of the best tag team. And Charlie Sterling is the British Mr. Perfect. The way he bounces, the way he bumps for people, Mr. Perfect, like.
But he has that panto in him as well. Like you see him before matches, like threatening, "I'm gonna get you," like to referees and stuff, and like the way he's able to launch himself over the ropes and stuff, like so effortlessly and make it so believable. Like the physicality they put through their bodies in this match, like there were so many ladder bumps onto hard concrete floor. There's no padding in the floor there in the electric ballroom whatsoever. Like, and there was beach balls. There was so many ladders. There's so much blood. Like poor Chuck Mambo, I thought was gonna die. Just Jesus Christ. It was if you get a chance, Progress on Demand have a 2-week free trial. So go out of they have a 2-week free trial. If you're watching this, go out of your way to watch day 2 of this. If you've nothing else to do, watch this match. Go out of your way, watch this match. This is absolutely outstanding. Charlie Sterling, Chuck Mambo, Nick Riley, TK Cooper, all take a bow. This is absolutely unbelievable. Best independent spectacle match I've seen in person ever.
My favorite match of the night, and was one of my favorite matches for the entire weekend, was that Lycos Nick Wayne. If you're a young wrestler, watch that match because it is so technically beautiful. It's great. And I love ladder matches and the car crash and the thing. But yeah, give me 2 people in the ring like those guys. And yeah, just brilliant.
Following that, then there was kind of a change in pace for those of us who were at the weekend. Nigel McGuinness did a magic show, and I was lucky enough to attend it. It was very cool. Like he did a tie-in about like the overarching story was around living life to the fullest as such. So he did a kind of video presentation slideshow type thing where he's playing videos with him and Jay Briscoe and talking about Jay Briscoe living his life to the full, and 2 of them going back and playing clips of him doing close hand magic tricks with Jay over the years. There's a lot of stuff whereby like his wife, who's his assistant, would go through the audience and like get you to write things down in a card, and he'd at random pick a card, and he'd like, "Oh, I'm guessing then you want to be a wrestler" type thing. And there's a lot of those kind of sleight of hand gimmicks, and he had a lot of funny gags against Bryan Danielson. Obviously, because the 2 of them are great friends, they have their historic rivalry from Ring of Honor. At one point, that a lot of us were brought up onto the stage, and myself included, and you put your hand into this bag, and you pick out a card or a token, and it was like heads or tails essentially. If you got heads, you have to tell the truth on who your favorite wrestler was. If you pick tails, you have to lie. So like I was with 3 other guys. I think I was the only person on the stage who wasn't drinking. I got the one card that told the truth, so I got isolated pretty quickly. So your man Nigel went going person by person, thinking, "Are you lying? You lying?" I got to the end, and then of course, he knew that I'd let the cat out the bag a bit early. He'd gone to me. He's like, "Who's your favorite wrestler?" And I said Dax Harwood, which is true. I like Dax Harwood. He's my favorite wrestler. And he goes, "Oh, I think you're lying." And I foolishly went, "Nah," thinking I got him. And then he was like, "No, I think you might be telling the truth." And I said it to him the next morning. Like, "Yeah, you let the cat out of the bag there." But it was brilliant. Then got to the end, and we all got like signed 8x10s, and it was good kind of crowd interaction. And there was a few other bits and pieces where they brought like Derice and Damo up into the stage, and they were doing like "Is this your car?" type thing. But it was a really nice end to an evening, because you'd gone through this like hectic helter skelter day of wrestling where like you've just peaked energy and cortisol and adrenaline wise, and then you kind of brought it down to this nice relaxing atmosphere where like the wrestlers in the crowd as well, and everybody's just enjoying a magic show, and like, and you're listening to somebody everybody loves and admires and respects. So the following morning, then
Before we get on to that,
of course,
actually, we should have covered what happened following the Will Osprey Nathan Cruz.
Sorry, spot on. Go on.
Yeah, of course, because after Nathan Cruz had cheated his way to victory, he went for a post-match beatdown. It was Prince of Pace, Callum Newman, who came to his rescue, after which he politely asked Will Osprey, I know we faced before, but that was for Pro UK in a, no fan environment. Let's, go for one more match. But then CPF came out, that being Joe Lando, Danny Black, and Maverick Mayhew. They were like, hey, man, we're supposed to be in an 8-man tag. They tried to make a joke about not recognizing names of WXW wrestlers. This upset Will Osprey, who called him a bunch of kids and told him to go to the back. And when Joe Lando slapped him, that was, oh my God, he gave him a good slap as well. And I was just like, this is getting good. And then, of course, he was like, oh, wait, look, there's 3 of you, there's 2 of us. I think I've got a friend. And then, bang, it was the return of Paul Robinson. And that led us to, 6-man tag for day 3. So let's get on to day 3. What are your thoughts on that segment alone?
I thought it was brilliant. And it was a really kind of cathartic moment for Will and Paul as well. And I thought the reaction, a lot of people might disagree with me on this. They might think I'm an idiot for saying this, but I thought it was lovely to see 2 people who've been maligned or accused of something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know the 100% ins and outs of it, but the fact that there's an investigation taking place and they've been brought back and welcomed with open arms, and the fact that Progress Wrestling have been willing to put their heads above the parapet and say, yeah, listen, we've investigated this and we're willing to take a chance on these 2 good people in our eyes. I thought that was a lovely moment, and you can see how much it meant to Paul as well.
Yeah.
I did also enjoy Will taking the piss out of CPF. I know you've got a CPF hat behind you there, but yeah, it was kind of, because I'm not as hugely familiar with CPF, so it was like, it looked a bit like Callum, Will, and Paul against the Munchkin Brigade or something, and I was like, what are these going to do to Will Osprey, like? But no, it was brilliant. Yeah, that did set us up beautifully for what happened the following day. The following morning, I then went over to the Nigel McGuinness seminar in the morning. Now, this was labeled as being an all-encompassing seminar, and it was going to be for promos, managers, commentators, and everything. It was all levels of ability. I rock up there. It was 10:30. I was there at 10. Nigel was already doing laps of the ring in the electric ballroom. All right, Ma, get your gear on. Okay, I haven't put my gear on for a few months, but okay. And then Norman Harris, Matthew Brooker from TNT, and a few guys from Hustle then turned up. And it was really, really cool. And in the sense of, you really got to understand Nigel's psychology for things, and just because wrestling nowadays is 100 miles an hour, and the beauty of wrestling is when it's slowed down and you actually get a chance to sell, and you actually get to tell a story. So it was almost a seminar for what to do if you're trying out for WWE, in terms of the match to produce and the promos to produce, to tell a very simple story. Small technical things they're looking for, be it around lockups, wrist locks, reversals, details around your cutoffs, telling a quick 3-4 minute match, and making it as story driven and digestible with as much technique as possible. Things that Riga will look for. And he also stressed that, like if you're a British based or a European wrestler, you need to know British chain. It's not just enough to go from lock up, headlock straight into a tackle. You need to know wrist locks. You need to know the Johnny Saint variations. You need to be able to go through these things. And he was very giving with his time in that. That was hugely beneficial to me. I absolutely loved every second of it. I was paired up with him because there was 5 of us, so it was me and him doing everything together. He's like, Mark, your bumps and your rolls are lovely, but your strikes are fucking shy. And I was like, oh, thank you. It was brilliant. And in the end, he took time at the end of us to kind of talk through our own, not just wrestling story, our personal story, like what our motivations were to get into wrestling and what kind of things we've overcome. But everybody had their own kind of background, to be personal health, my own personal physical and mental health issues. be it illnesses and whatnot. Norman Harris told us a lovely story. Matthew Brooker told us a lovely story as well. So it was really, really nice. And Nigel kind of touched on his own illnesses and stuff that he's gone through and to get to the point of his life, which he talked about the night before also. And he then randomly put me on the spot. Mark, right, before we all go, Mark's going to give us a promo. And I had to 30 seconds go and I had to give a promo very quickly. So it was good laugh as well. And like at the same time, you had by the end of it, all the progress and stuff, we're rehearsing things and going over, getting the production. You could see like a lot of pyro going off for the Nina Samuels match that was going to happen that day. But it was excellent. Thoroughly enjoyable morning that really inspired me. It's the best way to put it. But anyway, listen, we won't delay too much, dally on it much further. Day 3, this very much did feel like there was a different atmosphere in the ballroom this day. It felt everybody's a lot more relaxed. There's a lot less like, the best way to describe it, tension in the air. Everybody was quite happy to be there and just take in the wrestling for what it was. I suppose there's always kind of a day 1 excitement, a day 2 excitement. Some people may have only been there for the Electric Day 2 show. This was a lot more, not subdued, relaxed atmosphere is the best way to put it. There wasn't as much funny chanting from the crowd, but everybody was still having a 30 good time on a bank holiday Monday. Maybe people were hungover as well. Maybe that played into it. So, to kick us things off, then we had but via satellite, we had Simon Miller beam his big shiny head into us to present us with the Ups and Downs Battle Royal, which consisted of everybody bar Danny Black and Will Osprey, who had taken place in the Super Strong Size 16 tournament, into essentially over the top rope battle royal. There's a huge amount of shenanigans involving Tate Mayfair's and everybody kind of beating him up, and eventually got to the point where Rampage Brown won. Again, this was a nice way to set the show off. Everybody having fun, getting the crowd involvement, everybody having a laugh, for bringing that kind of energy down a bit before it can be raised back up and focus levels dialed in for the following matches from that. What was your thoughts on that?
I really love the fact that, because I hate these matches normally, but I really enjoyed this one, and it was because they told a lot of individual stories in amongst it all, and I think that can really set apart a good battle royal with a crap one. There were a lot of different individual interactions throughout, and made it a thoroughly enjoyable little 12-man. Well, was it 12-man plus Bullet?
Yeah. I wasn't sure why Bullet was there, but anyway, the funniest stuff from where I was sitting, the best part of it was I think the second and third person to come out were Charles Crowley and Maggot. So they sat in opposite corners of the ring, just like mouthing, "I'll kill you, mate," just for the whole way through. And then, like when it all kicked off, and then we started fighting, the two of them just like slowly made their way across the ring to eventually get into each other. And then there was a point where I think both were eliminated, both disappeared. And then later in the match, they both reappeared from underneath the ring where they've been fighting the whole time.
Yeah,
it was funny stuff like that. It was again, it was a really nice tone setter for the day. Then following that, we then had into our semi-final matchups. We had Mark Haskins beat Northeast Strong Luke Jacobs, or Northwest Strong, sorry, Luke Jacobs. Then that was another very physical matchup. Luke Jacobs, I say, was by the end of this weekend was very, very sore, I imagine. Yeah. So listen, fair play to him. He absolutely batters people and lets himself get battered all weekend. So listen, it was a hugely giving performance from him from start to finish. And Haskins just does what Haskins does. He's just incredible.
So good. Just again, another guy who should just be bloody signed to a big company.
Like,
he's still owed an ROH World Championship shot, Mr. Tony Khan. Okay, back when Rush was ROH champion, he won a #1 contenders match. Then the pandemic hit. Well, he's still owed an ROH championship match in my eyes.
Listen, sack Rush. He goes off script during matches and take liberties with people. Bring Mark Haskins in. He'll be a good employee.
Good overkill.
Yeah, exactly. Then following that, we then had your favorite wrestler in the entire world, Kid Like Us, beat Nathan Cruz with his big magic bird stick. Kid Like Us, yeah, this is a really good match.
You can't out shenanigan Kid Like Us.
No. But it was good, and it was brilliant to see Nathan Cruz kind of get the spotlight throughout the weekend, where he's kind of got to the point where he's been in the tournament all 3 days as well. So hopefully that means he's going to be featured more heavily and more prominently in progress going forward now that he's back within the fold. But again, this is all building to Kid Like Us at this point. Like after that match, it was like, well, course Lycos is winning this. Like, how be a bit random. Like, we all love Haskins, but it'd be like, what's the story behind Haskins winning? Just he won it because he's the best wrestler. Okay, but is that's not really
I can
emotionally
give
drove?
you some story for Haskins because he was my original first pick, and I sort of went with him because he is a former Progress World Champion. However, when he won the title, he then had to give the title up immediately due to injury,
Yeah.
so he never got to defend it. When he got back, he got thrusted into the tag team scene. I think first alongside Flash Morgan Webster, and then alongside Jimmy Bloody Havoc. So he kind of never got his due, obviously, and he was never. He had competed in Super Strong Style 16 4 times, never made it past the semi-finals. So there was a story there, just not as big as a story as there was for Kid Lycos. And once we get right to the end, I'll go into the whole Lycos thing.
Following that, then we had one of the most unique matches I've seen, and I loved it because this really brought you into the storytelling they have in progress and the kind of video packages they played beforehand. So it wasn't like a catch up; it was just explaining the story brilliantly, and it was such a well done package. It was almost WWE-esque. The countdown, or is it the Clock Strikes Midnight match? Is that the correct term? Clock Strike Midnight match between Alexis Falcon and Nina Samuels, and they've all had this really personal back and forth rivalry where Nina's threatening to bring out a different side of Alexis, trying to show her up for who she really is. I thought this was incredible. So I think it started off with a submission match, I believe, start first.
Oh well, yeah, singles. It did kind of start slowly, but
yeah,
boy, did this match build.
Yeah, so like, sorry, sure, people watching this. So the Clock Strike Midnight match, it would start off at the start. The clock would strike midnight, and you go boom, like a big gong, and on the screen would say singles match. So you start off with the singles match, and then at a certain random point, it'll then have a new stipulation. I think the next one was submission match, and then that match built, whereby it then got to a point where I think Nina or Alexis may have been about to submit, and then the clock struck midnight again, and it then moved into a
table match at one
tables
point.
Tables match. Yeah, it was a tables match, and then again it was built and built and built to another point where I think Nina might have been about to go through a table. And
Yeah,
the clock struck midnight again. Then it was into a first blood match, and then the first blood match went through that. It got to a point where one of them was about, I think, I don't know how they weren't start bleeding because they're butchering each other's foreheads. But the clock struck midnight before a referee could make a decision, and then it went to a death match. And the death match was incredibly physical, gory to an extent. It was brutal. Both participants were unbelievably giving of their bodies to one another. I was mesmerized and awestruck by how good it was. I thought the storytelling from both start to finish. And again, much like the day before, when you kind of see two female talents of this caliber, and then you compare it to a lot of stuff that you see on mainstream American television, I think it's night and day. Like, I don't know how they're not signed to mainstream contracts. Like, they're absolutely amazing. I thought Nina Samuels, like 5 minutes after the match was over, was out at the merchandise table, even though she lost. Alexis Falcon had won. It was, I couldn't believe, like, the bump she was taking, the going through tables, thumbtacks, Lego toys. Oh, it was incredible.
I would say both absolutely deserve their praise for this match, but for me, Nina Samuels kind of edges out my praise for her out of the two, just because she was so given in this match. She went through hell and took some really nasty bumps, all in effort to get Alexis Falcon over to that next level, which she did. Alexis Falcon has reached that next level, and I think in part due to just how phenomenal Nina was.
Yeah, and I think listen, both of them were just hugely deserving of every flower they get for this match, and every plaudit and praise they get is well and truly deserved. This brought us to intermission then, and I think everybody had to gather themselves for a good half an hour afterwards, go outside for a quiet word with themselves, like, Jesus, what have I just watched? Then brought us into a feel-good match then. We had, as we touched on just a minute ago, we had the Swords of Essex, this time comprising of 3 people, Callum Newman, Paul Robinson, Will Osprey, or the Swords of Essex Jean Brigade, because they're all wearing jeans, as my friend dubbed it. They are against Danny Black, Joe Lando, Maverick Mayhew, CPF. Now, this, of course, match was built around this being Paul Robinson's first match back in Progress Wrestling. It was also built around kind of Callum being kind of a coming of age match, where it's a sense that he's trained in the same schools that Will has done, and he's now competing alongside him as a peer rather than kind of underneath him.
Mm.
That was my kind of takeaway from it. There's a couple of nice moments with Danny Black and Joe Lando. Maverick all got a few physical slaps and stuff in, but I think there was a difference in levels between the two teams. What was really interesting to see being up so close was Will Osprey directing every single moment of every single part of the match.
Mm.
Like you could see him, his mind is working 100 miles an hour, and he's dictating and directing everything. Hence why he's the best wrestler alive. Like he's just on a different level, in my
Mm.
opinion, to anybody aside from Brian Danielson. But that's just my opinion. Um,
Yeah,
it
I
was
agree.
yeah, like it was just insane. It was really good, and then afterwards they had kind of Paul Robinson had his moments where they kind of let him have the ring, and he talked about like listen, it's brilliant to be back, and that you live by the sword, you die by the sword, and kind of talk about well, I'm all gonna get you type stuff. But it was really really good. Really enjoyed it.
See, and obviously there was the part where Will Ospreay, he tells Maverick, Callum Newman, go make up with CPF and whatnot. And this was very telling, very different to, obviously he recently had Dan Maloney join United Empire. And the message he sent out was quite clear to Dan Maloney. You need to stop joking around with the 0121. They're holding you back, they're holding you down. And that's different to the story he was telling here with CPF, Danny Black, Joe Lando. He was like, no, you guys need to be together right now.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so heartbreaking at the end to see them all turn their back on Callum.
Yeah, like, listen,
Oh,
but I suppose it was obviously so. Maverick was the last one to go through the curtain. He
yeah,
was kind of touring, so like that's good for them though. That'll obviously lead to a 2-on-2 and hopefully a reconciliation down the line. But I
I
mean,
hope so.
of the four, like Callum's the star. Callum is the star, and like I think he's more than ready for. Yeah,
Try not to be too biased, but I probably, yeah. I think it was last year when they said a member of Super Strong of CPF will be in Super Strong Style 16,
yeah,
and I said has to be Callum Newman. I
yeah,
said Callum Newman. He's the biggest of the lot. He does have the most stage presence. He also probably has the most big match experience due to his time at Rev Pro UK. Joe Lando and Danny Black right now, they've been working goddamn hard. They look amazing compared to how they looked a year ago. They're looking buff as shit right now.
yeah.
And they've been putting in the hard work. And they're going to be an amazing tag team duo. And that should be, for me, the focal point of CPS. Danny Black and Joe Lando as a tag team. Mav and Callum's being in your singles action with Callum, maybe, as you say, as the.
Yeah.
But we'll have to see where it goes
Yeah.
now and see if it carries into other promotions as well. That's going to be the key telling part of is he CPF or not.
That's a funny point you make because the day before on the Saturday of Progress Day 1, OTT had a show, tag team tournament, and Callum Newman and Maverick Mayhew were over competing in OTT the day before. So it's funny, kind of one day is Swords of Essex, one day is the CPF, but obviously that was before the shenanigans and fallout of day 2. But yeah, listen, everybody I know within the Irish scene who saw Callum Newman compete recently, he's been over a couple of times in the past few months. Everybody's kind of blown away by just his technical abilities, presence, and obviously Prince of Pace, his bloody speed. He's fucking
His
frightening.
innovation as well in
Yeah.
the ring.
Yeah.
He doesn't rest on his laurels. He doesn't rely on the same old tricks. Every match with Callum Newman is different. He's always working on something new.
Yeah, 100%. But then we started following on from that. We then led into Spike Gervais beat Connor Mills, and that was kind of they teased this the day before. Was there a tease of this day 1?
Yeah, yeah. Great to see Connor Mills back. I'm a huge fan of Connor Mills, and so felt a little bit disappointed that it kind of felt flat at the end with him not even really having that much of an interference out. He kind of, yes, there was some interference, but overall, typically on a whole spike, it almost like he spiked one clean.
Yeah,
Because,
yeah, there wasn't a huge amount of takeaways from Connor, but it was kind of cool the way it was presented as kind of this run and hit and run assassin throughout the weekend, and really being a pain in Spike's here. I've trained Connor a few times over in the Rev Pool Rev Pro London School rather. I think he's incredible. He's brilliant. Everything he does. Like from his pack match last year, I've seen a few times. He's insanely good.
Yeah, he's always been overshadowed by his Destination Everywhere, or former tag team
Yeah,
Destination Everywhere, Michael Oku. I've always said that Connor Mills, as a wrestling standpoint, is probably the more gifted of the two. Just so happens that Michael Oku is one of the most charismatic
yeah,
individuals you're ever going to see in a
yeah.
ring.
I think every time I see Spike Trevay, I am always blown away by just how deliberate everything he does is. Like it's just his mannerisms, his movements, even his strikes. Like it's there's an additional character level to what he does that like it's not necessarily wrestling moves. There's a sinister violence and everything. He's
The
intent.
best villain
Yeah.
in
Oh,
Europe,
by
or
I
possibly even the world. Honestly, yeah,
yeah, country mile. But like just the small nuances he has in his move set, there's just evil. Just
yeah.
evil. Do you know what I mean? It's just and it's so well thought out and everything he does. I'm sure he's a lovely fella, but like
He is actually, because I've had a chance to interview him, and he did it in character. We did it kind of like, but he's such a nice guy overall. But he's, as you say, what an absolute freaking a wrestling ring.
yeah. And
Just so good at it as well.
I love the Dominatus Regnum stable as well, and you got to see Charlie and Nick and Bullet come out afterwards, and like
You
he's
know,
just got
this is a
he's
guy who could have
yeah
done it back in WOS era to now era.
yeah
He it doesn't matter where you land him in
yeah
wrestling, he would fit.
yeah
He's just so gifted.
like yeah he's just
And
stupidly. I'd love to see him like. I
him
know
and
they've
the
been at,
whole Cara Noir stuff was
yeah,
so good.
yeah, and I'm curious to see where you're gonna go with that next kind of parallel babyface. Like you obviously have Cara Noir now he's out for long term, and they've kind of completed that story. Like you'd wonder where like Kid Lycos I don't see being a long term kind of parallel
No,
protagonist.
when they were announcing people for Super Strong Star 16, I was waiting for them to announce Michael Oku,
Yeah,
because for me, that's going to be a natural progression in Progress at some point, because when they both started in Progress, they feuded against each other.
yeah,
Uh, Michael Oku is definitely one of the best talents in Europe, in the world right now.
yeah,
Yeah, I know he had falling out with the previous Progress
yeah,
management, but not that with Lee and those guys. So it has always surprised me that he hasn't been brought
yeah.
back yet. Could Lycos just take the title off Spike and not have a long-term thing? No.
No,
I have a feeling that
yeah,
Lycos is probably going to be in Japan next year. So
right. DDT or somewhere would he or
I reckon I reckon he, at some point Chris Brooks will want to bring Lycos over there full
yeah.
time.
Yeah, like it's I kind of look at the Spike thing and now that they've kind of now they got the tag titles, you've gotten now to a base level and it's kind of where do you build from here? It's kind of they've now established they've got like four pillars in that kind of group where it's you've now entering that WWE kind of heel faction where everybody's got the gold and it's kind of a period of dominance now before somebody progresses. It's not somebody turns up on the day Connor Mills or Kid Lycos who will take the title from it. Somebody who's going to be in the background will work for 6 months or 6 shows progressively, build its own stock, and they'll be intentionally kept away from them in front of the fans.
Yeah.
So like that's the way I kind of see it
I
within.
thought RKJ could have been a guy as well, but
Yeah,
they had him win the Atlas Championship instead. It still makes my mind boggle why they
yeah,
had him go after the Atlas Championship and
yeah.
not Spike.
Well,
But
RKJ's a funny one. Like we are supposed to be over to us OTT a while ago, but he couldn't because of visa issues and things like that. So and he's been dropped off a lot of shows recently as well. So there's probably got a few different things in the background going on, so it may be a
yeah,
determining factor for that. So yeah, again, like that'd be Kid Lycos is they're just mirror opposites. Not Kid Lycos, sorry, Car Noir and Spike Gervais. They're just that perfect protagonist antagonist kind of dynamic. Do you know what I mean? They're kind of
yeah,
similar-ish in stature as well. Like over here in Ireland, I ideally think in a year's time you'll end up having LJ Cleary, Sammy D at some point, kind of crossing paths.
mm,
And again, they've been intentionally kind of kept away from each other as well. So, you'd wonder who will next be on the horizon. Hopefully, it's Michael Oku, and Michael Oku will have sustained builds, kind of get to a point where he's the one to take the title from Spike.
yeah. There's not many people on the scene who
No,
Callum Newman.
Possibly, yeah, definitely.
Just if you're gonna give him a singles chance, keep him away for Spike for a while, have him build, have him win singles after
Yeah,
singles. Dan Maloney could have been one, but
yeah,
he's now Bullet Club and you're Bullet Club for life.
yeah.
So he's probably not going to be back on the UK scene all that much.
No.
And
Again, probably the same with Will. Then, like,
yeah,
they'll be doing appearances here there.
Paul Robinson.
Sorry.
Paul Robinson could be a good shout.
Could be, yeah, could be. Depends on his own longevity as well in terms of how long he's physically capable of going as
Mm,
well for a number of years out of the ring. So probably age profile might be against him,
yeah,
if I'm correct as well. So anyway, sorry, we're beating about the bush here for a bit, but back
right.
into the main event of the entire weekend. What the entire weekend was building up to a point, the final of the Super Strong Style 16 tournament, which featured the one and only Kid Lycos against a former OTT Progress champion Mark Haskins. Kid Lycos won this in a riveting bout,
Mm,
and it was beautiful to see. Like, I'm removed from this. I'm not a regular at Progress shows. It was brilliant to see like the emotional investment of everybody in the room and how much it meant to them. To the fact that Lycos won, to the point where everybody was charging the ring afterwards. Nigel McGuinness was special referee, I may add, but everybody's charging the ring after, battering the canvas, throwing streamers in. Lycos 2 came down. The two of them were in floods of tears. Lycos gave a lovely speech afterwards, how he'd stepped away from wrestling a while ago. He didn't think it was for him, but Progress had kept him around, work backstage as a producer, keep him involved in the scene, and his investment in himself and returning to the ring has paid off to the point now where it's been a full circle moment for him. It may not go. I think he said even if he doesn't win it, if he doesn't win the world title, that moment made it worthwhile for him.
yeah.
It was a beautiful kind of sentimental moment, and I think everybody in the room appreciated that.
Yeah, because if you'd gone around at the early points, in fact, I know for a fact with Lee standing out the front, he was asking people as they were going in, who do you think is going to win? And I remember I was got to myself and I'm like, Kid Lycos. And he's like, you're like one of the only people who said Kid Lycos today. It just nobody had him on their list. Or there were very few people who had
Yeah,
Kid Lycos on their list to win. People were like, it's going to be Leon Slater because the guy's brilliant. Yeah, but he's 18 years old. He's not going to win yet.
yeah.
Man like Doris was kind of in a similar situation. Charles Crowley isn't quite there yet.
Yeah.
Luke Jacobs could have been a good shout, given that he does have some history as well. But Lycos Jim had that perfect blend of past, present, and future of Progress. Out of everyone in the tournament, he had that link of being that encompassing past, present, future. His in-ring quality just keeps getting better and better and better, and Lycos is so bloody good. He is one of the best wrestlers in the world right now. And so yeah, to see those fans start to believe that Kid Lycos is going to win when he beat Big Damo in the first one, the cheers, and
Yeah.
then suddenly people are like, oh, wait, and then he beat Nick Wayne, and
Mhm.
people are like, okay, right, yeah, and then he gets that big win over Nathan Cruz, despite Nathan Cruz trying shenanigans again, huge. And then he gets his ass absolutely handed to him by Mark Haskins for about 70% of this match. And yet he came over it, and then bam, and the crowd reaction was just perfect.
Yeah, and it was again like as somebody slightly removed from it. I know a lot of Irish fans who've seen Kid Lycos appear for OTT shows, particularly in Wolverhampton we've done recently.
Mm,
They've been kind of like perplexed 'cause, like it might often be like a multi-man match where it'd be like a four-way kind of cruiserweight type match. Not everybody can kind of understand like what is Lycos, who is Lycos, where this kind of tournament gave him an opportunity to sell how good he is in terms of his actual selling pain, selling fatigue, selling struggle. Um, and really get a fan emotional and buy-in for what he's
mm,
doing, what he's presenting, and he can. It really gave me a new appreciation and understanding of who he is as a performer, who is he as a wrestler and a character. Like it was, yeah, it was all like it was quite emotional by the end of it after he gave his speech as well. I was like, geez, fucking fair play to this guy. This guy's overcome over so much. He's not the most heralded guy in the world. He's almost like a beloved comedy character in some aspects where he does the
mm.
brain buster, shut up like us, the crowd shout back. So like to see somebody so loved by a local populace, like it was a beautiful moment for a wrestling fan as a whole.
Mm, absolutely, yeah. And for me, that just made the whole because if it weren't for Kid Lycos winning, Alexis Falcon, Nina Samuels would have stolen the entire show.
Yeah.
But just the fact that Lycos won, or just made Lycos the show stealer and the weekend stealer, it was absolutely incredible, and what a moment for him. And they say the whole "you deserve it," well, no, nobody deserves it. Well, no, he deserves it because he earned it. He put the fucking work in. He put match after match. He's been getting bigger and bigger in size. That's why he earned it, not because that's why he deserved it, not just because he's been around for a long time or been a big member for Progress over the last few years. No, he deserves it because he earned it.
Yeah, 100%. Now, okay, just before we wrap up, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. So
Go for it.
they're all 3. The first one, what is your biggest takeaway from the whole weekend? No, one thing, big takeaway. Might be a moment, might be a match, might be a feeling, sensation, might be an interaction, whatever it would be.
Just that moment of Kid Lycos, that was one of the best. It's just an absolute elation moment. It was to see it was just great.
Yeah, like for me, it was the feeling at the end of day 2,
Mm,
as the whole weekend, just the atmosphere in the room, the electricity of that ladder match, the um deflation at the end of the Lana Austin Millie McKenzie match, that feeling leaving the venue on day 2, I've just seen something special as a show.
yeah.
And some people may prefer day 3, but for me, day 2 was just, it blew my mind. And then follow on from that. So I'm not going to be unfair and make you choose one match. You can if you want, but I was going to say, would you choose 3 matches from the whole weekend if somebody had to go out of their way on Progress and Demand to see that you love the most? Not necessarily something that somebody else would love, but what did you, Andrew Moore, love the most?
On the Progress side, I'm gonna just on the WXW side,
Yeah, of
go
course.
watch
Include
Peter Tahani versus Michael Oku is a great match, and I think everybody should go out of their way to watch those two
yeah,
have that fantastic match. But Nick Wayne versus Kid Lycos day 2. I love the aggression from Danny Black against Charles Crowley in their match. It was very quick, very sudden win for Charles Crowley. The Alexis Falcon, Nina Samuels, as I say, I almost thought they were going to lose the crowd at one point, but damn, they brought that match back and just turned it into the best match of that night. The CPF boys turning their back on on Callum Newman would
yeah,
definitely be a moment, and then it's just the final itself, Lycos versus Haskins.
yeah. But for me, I'm going to go with I chose story-based moments. This is just my own takeaway from the weekend. I'm normally a wrestling heavy kind of fan, but for me, the way it was the yeah, is the best way for it. Everything involved, the television packaging, the pyro, the shenanigans, everything around all 3 of these matches. Number 3, Alexis Falcon versus Nina Samuels. Countdown to Midnight match. Number 2, Lana Austin versus Millie McKenzie. That kind of overarching story that from Millie kind of chasing the gold against Lana, Ellie Taylor, and Sky Smithson. And number 3, the tag team match to finish day 2, Sunshine Machine versus Smoking Aces. I just thought all 3 of them were incredible matches. Very good wrestling stories being told. There was everything you could love about independent wrestling across all 3, with high value
Mm.
production attached to it and high, well thought out stories attached to it as well. All 3 matches had emotional tie-ins and investment for everybody in the venue, and I absolutely loved it. Okay, the last question, gun to your head now. What are your expectations or hopes for Progress for the rest of the summer? Coming up with their Defy shows in Canada, they've got the Defy shows coming up all in weekend. Anything big you want to see, be it Spike Gervais be decapitated, or Kid Like Us to win all the gold, or anything? Could be as bizarre as you want or as realistic as you want.
I'm going to follow up and I'm going to say that I don't mean this by any offense, Martin or Lee. I'm very disappointed that the next UK show isn't till August. And the next
Yeah,
show is going to be in Canada. They've had this incredible weekend, and it feels like it's this missed opportunity to
yeah,
capitalize on this great weekend. And yeah, to think that you've now got to wait till August and the AEW
yeah.
weekend for possibly to see this kid like us, Spike Trevay thing culminate, it is a little bit disheartening to see. And there's going to be another great London promotion who are going to take great advantage of that by putting on 5 shows in this month alone. But I just want to see some sort of kid like us, Spike Trevay. Maybe we can keep kid like us away from Spike Trevay for a time being, have Spike dodge him, have Spike throw Bullet at him, throw Nick Riley at him, throw Charlie Sterling at him, build it up for 6 months or so, especially now that you're having such a big gap. You need to rebuild this feud. And I think, you've got to have Spike Trevay. I don't think we, in August, don't have Spike Trevay versus Kid Like Us. It's going to be, despite it being too late, it's also going to be too soon to do it, considering it's too late. You got to rebuild the feud, and I hope to see them do that. Off the back, I'd love to see more stores of the Essex. I definitely want to see more of the CPF Callum Newman thing going on. I wouldn't mind seeing some of the CPF boys, maybe Joe Landor or Danny Black, have a shot at the Proteus Championship if Paul Robinson is going to bring that championship back. Michael Oku at some point maybe to return now that we've had Connor Mills return as well. More women's wrestling. We had 2 women's wrestling matches on throughout the entire weekend, which isn't particularly all that great. They were both great matches. But Progress have been known for doing 2 or 3 women's matches a show. So to see him only do 2 over the entire weekend, so more women wrestling for Progress. But I think they can kick off and take it into a great next level. It's a shame that we got to wait 3 months for it to happen, but I still think they've got a chance to take Progress to the next level from this.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on in terms of the Canadian shows should have been in addition to their already scheduled programming. They should have built off and try to build momentum off the back of this. Like even if a monthly show, June, July, August, like something simple like that. You're tying and you're building up into the lead up to All In Weekend, and like that's kind of the staple for kind of major promotions. You do at least one big show per month. You might do a couple of house-based shows where, like say, other shows will do kind of school shows like OTT. We do contender shows, School of Irish Wrestling shows, whereby the fan base is still being exposed to wrestling. People still get reps, but also storylines are continuing on at a smaller level. And those who are following on demand will be rewarded for following on demand. But there's now an expectation that if you're following Progress between now and August, you have to watch the on demand, and like not everybody maybe have the budget to do so, given kind of inflationary times as well. But listen, that's neither here nor my own hopes, pie in the sky hopes for Progress and All In Weekend. I hope to see the following. I 2 wishes. I want to see a summer build. Obviously, it might necessarily be feasible now given the structure they have for it, but I would love to see a summer build building towards Lana Austin versus Session Moth Martina. I think that would be a incredibly well done match and story to be told there. And I think, if possible, the Forum Progress Tag Team Champions, if they were released from their contracts tomorrow, as they've wished for, grizzled young veterans, take on the Smoking Aces at over All In Weekend. I think that could be just mind-blowingly good. I'm a tag team wrestling nerd. I love it. When it's done right, I don't think there's anything better.
Give me the GYV versus Aussie Open rematches. They have to happen because 2 of the best tag teams in the world right now.
Yeah, listen, I think everybody's hoping for GYV to be available at some point over that weekend, somewhere at some promotion. So those are my hopes anyway. But listen, that was a really fruitful and enjoyable conversation with Andy. Always brilliant catching up with you. It's good to shoot in the breeze, talking shite for a while. So that was really. Listen, thank you very, very much for giving up so much of your time. I know like we're all up the walls in a minute, so I do appreciate that. Thank you everybody who's been watching this. Please go out of your way to take Progress up on their free 2-week trial to catch up on all these shows once they become available on demand. They are more than worth your while. I promise you that. Thank you to Lee, Martyn, and all the team who welcomed us, put on such an amazing weekend. For me coming over from Ireland, thank you to WXW for putting on an amazing show on the Friday night or Saturday night, and then amazing magic show and seminar from Nigel McGuinness. Thank you from me. Andrew, any words for Tees and Tights audience, Irish wrestling audience, anything you'd like to unburden yourself with and get off your chest?
I think I'm just going to leave it with the way I typically signed off on all my old things. Support European wrestling, support British wrestling, Irish wrestling, support independent wrestlers, support independent wrestling podcasts that support independent wrestling.
I couldn't have said it better than myself, and you've summed up everything I believe in my heart. So listen, Andrew, thank you very, very much again. Thank you for all for watching, and we will see you soon.